Hello and welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started since it's right at the top of the hour and we have a lot of things we want to share today. Welcome to the February Community of Practice. I'm Diana Bogan and I'm here with Amy Erickson and Stephanie Heldfischer to share this month's content with you, which is aligning a philosophy of teaching with incompletes and extensions. So, the annual faculty curriculum this academic year was based on leveraging a philosophy of teaching to benefit both instructors and students. This training posits that a well-articulated teaching philosophy that reflects on various learning theories, embraces the culture of care, and incorporates your own successful strategies will make teaching more enjoyable and effective. We want faculty to view their teaching philosophy as not another task or box to tick, but rather as a framework to empower you and provide you with information that has been proven to contribute to student success. If you have not yet completed the annual faculty curriculum on leveraging a philosophy of teaching, we'll drop a link in the chat so you can complete it. If you have completed it, we thank you and hope that you enjoyed it. Please also note that we appreciate and love your participation in these sessions. We do want this to be a safe space for learning for all. So know that we never want you to feel obligated or uncomfortable participating. We do want you to stick around for the whole session if your schedule allows, to either participate in or listen to our discussion at the end of the session. All right. My slides are being slow today. So in January, we discussed aligning your teaching philosophy with the culture of care. And during that session, we discussed extensions and incompletes quite a bit. It came up a lot. And we wanted to dive into this topic a bit more in this session. So today we want to discuss how one's teaching philosophy can help faculty with offering extensions and incompletes. So before we get started, we've had quite a few new faculty join us in the last few months, which we're very excited about, but we want to just take a step back and share some information about our student body. So we have 48% minority students, 65% female students, 26% are military, and 87% are over 25 years old. Because 87% of our students are over 25 years old. Many are juggling family, jobs, military obligations. It's easy to see how students juggling various obligations may need time and space to adequately complete classroom content. The majority of our population is not primarily 18 to 22-year-olds. I have an 18 to 22-year-old in college, and I would say his needs are often very different than the needs of our students. He definitely needs guidance on time management and meeting rigid guidelines, communicating with professors on his own. He's learning how to do all those things, but most of our students don't need that particular kind of guidance. Okay, moving on. Flexibility and equity. Equality versus equity. So often faculty feel that if they give one individual an incomplete, they are obligated to give every student an incomplete or an extension in order to make everything the same, make it equal. I know in my experience in supporting faculty, sometimes new faculty, new to our institution, that was the case. They weren't sure if they could give that extension because they didn't give everyone else the same opportunity. So we would just want to take a moment and pause here to consider equality versus equity. And if you would, could you go ahead and type in the chat what you feel is the difference between equality and equity? Nancy, that is a great question on minority, and I actually don't know Oh, you sent me a direct message. I don't know if you want me to tell the whole world. I'll answer you. I'll answer you privately. Okay. Sally said that that is a great, the graphic is a good representation. Dedication and commitment is the effort. Equal means everyone receives the same thing. Equality means we meet everyone where they are by supporting them to reach the same goal. That was what Kate said. And that is pretty much what I think this image is trying to show there, is that, like Ali said, one size fits all versus fitting the support to the need of the person. Equity is not a one size fits all. It could just be that one student can be completely successful without an extension, but another student can be successful if given that opportunity. William, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I've seen this same illustration, except for each of the three people. They were facing a fence and looking into a ball diamond to watch a
Mm-hmm.
game. And so the shortest person under equality could not see in the game. But
Right.
according to doing the boxes in the second illustration, all three of them could see and watch the game.
And that image is actually very popular when we're talking about equality and equity. And Amy had pulled that one up first, and I said that I read an article about that particular image, and they took issue. There was a few things. They're like, well, why are all of why are they all depicted as men? Why are they depicted as one similar color? Why is it an age thing? What about people who have disabilities versus just being shorter or whatever? So we tried to simplify with this image, but it is a good representation of what do they need. If you give everyone the same size box, they can see over the fence or they can reach the apple. But that shorter guy there, he can't reach the apple with just one box. He needs three. So definitely something to remember. All right. I'm trying to catch up in the chat. And Amy, if I miss anything really important, just let me know. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. Okay, so let's take another moment, and we're going to take a quick poll. Jackie, if you could launch that. How do you use extensions and incompletes in your classroom? Okay, we're about 70% participation. And the choices are: as part of my goal to provide an equitable classroom as a means to demonstrate UAGC's culture of care, a way to show radical flexibility to students, all of the above, or I don't grant extensions and incompletes. And I'm very happy to see that no one chose that one. So good job. Everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, about 60% of you chose all of the above. There's not really a right or wrong answer, but that is awesome to see. Oh, should have given options to choose more than one. That is a good idea. Okay. So we are going to move on just a bit. And I'm going to hand it over to Amy.
Thank you, and thank you all for your contributions so far in the chat. I'm going to be talking about an article on flexibility and Relationality in Education by Professor of Education and Human Development at the University of Minnesota, Dr. George Veletsianos, and postdoctoral researcher Chandel Holden. They share a commonly held belief about the model learner. And this is the learner who has the wherewithal to make or access the capital, time, and space for learning in spite of all the other obligations they may have. So some might call this person the perfect student. Macmillan Cotton refers to this person as the roaming autodidact. And the authors go on to say that this learner is, and this is the quote, divorced from the messy reality that the majority of the world faces. So I think this concept is really interesting if we consider the expectations we may place on our own students. Do we expect them to have the capital and the time and the space for learning? Or do we perhaps assign elements from our own experience or a model learning experience to them? If you go ahead and advance the slide, Diana. It is moving slowly, isn't it? So these authors go on to discuss the notion of the model learner's experience and how it stands in stark contrast to the educational experiences of women, essential workers, elderly, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And it also stands in stark contrast to the inequities that the pandemic exposed. And if you can go ahead and advance the slide, Diana. Now, I tend to think that UAGC faculty have been aware of the many obstacles our students have encountered. But if one is new to teaching or new to UAGC, the pandemic revealed inequities that may not have been considered. For example, during the pandemic, I was working at a community college. And as long as students could come to campus, they could access the Wi-Fi and they had adequate bandwidth to watch assigned videos or download required content. But once they can no longer come to campus, these things changed. And administrators and faculty members worked tirelessly to find solutions for these students. And when I was teaching at UAGC during the pandemic, I had more than one student who was evicted due to losing their job as a result of the pandemic. And they needed time, resources, and understanding as they navigated the unplanned situation of living in their car. So that brings us to an important concept the authors defined as radical flexibility. It's not a structure, but a mindset, an orientation, allowing us to consider obstacles that the pandemic made evident. And some of you have heard me talk about Dr. Mays Imad of Connecticut College, who specializes in the neurobiology of learning. And she has a similar concept. She calls it radical hospitality. And it's something she seeks to provide in all of her classrooms. And Diana, if you could go ahead and move forward. I think it's really important too that these authors reminded us that before the pandemic, life was already a catastrophe of desperation and exclusion for far too many people. And for many, COVID is not over. According to Kaiser Health News in January of just last month, a couple weeks ago, it noted that 20,000 Americans have passed away since October of 2023. So this is not over for a lot of people. And if you can go ahead and advance the slide, Diana. So what can we do? So Veletsianos and Holden suggest that radical flexibility can support more equitable, just, accessible, empowering, and imaginative educational futures. And I'd like you to take a moment now and maybe pop some ideas in the chat of how you think radical flexibility could do this. I'm just going to pull up the chat here and I love radical hospitality too, Nancy. I just think that's such a wonderful, wonderful term. And she also has, I think her name on X is Learning Sanctuary. That's so lovely. Yes, Sally focuses on learning outcome, not a timetable. Exactly. We were discussing earlier in a meeting how if a student doesn't learn something in a 6-day period, does that mean they can just never learn it? We have to really look at our ideas about learning. Inspire proactive instructor communication and build an equitable course experience. Lovely, Ted. Promote belonging. So nice. Puts the students learning first before anything else. I love that, Haley. Stop seeing it as radical. I like that, Allison. View it as what's needed in the here and now, and it isn't so radical anymore. Exactly. It's interesting, isn't it, that we have to call it radical? So thank you so much for popping those ideas in. And if you could go ahead and just advance the slide, Diana. So in terms of extensions and incompletes, we thought it might be valuable to share some misconceptions along with some data surrounding extensions and incompletes. And again, if you could go ahead and advance that slide. So the first misconception is that students will take advantage of my flexibility and incompletes will skyrocket. Anybody think that? I mean, I think it's okay to admit if you thought that would happen. Let's go ahead and advance the slide. Incompletes definitely have increased, but in half of the incidents, students pass the class, and that really makes it worthwhile. And to show you how worthwhile this is, we're bringing in the big guns here. Diana is going to do some math for us because as a literature major, I don't do math. So I'm going to step back and let Diana explain to you exactly what that means.
That's not true, Amy. You do math all the time. Okay. So Amy, yes, you are absolutely right. The data says, and when I say data, I mean our Office of Institutional Effectiveness has been tracking incompletes before we implemented this culture of care and flexibility and after. So we have some data from 2022 and half of 2023. We made this change in February of 2022. So we have seen an increase in incompletes. You could even say that the number of incompletes have doubled. But what does that mean? So in 2021, there were a total of 230,000 grades, and there were around 2,000 incompletes. In 2022, there were 188,000 grades and 4,693 incompletes. So you can see it did go from 0.9% to 2.5%. And it's still trending up. In 2023, it increased to 3.3% of the grades, but that's only partial amount of data. Interestingly, the percentage of incompletes that result in a passing grade stayed about the same, 50% before this change, 46% after. So what does that mean in terms of students who received grades that they may not have before? So in 2021, if it's at a rate of 50%, about 1,000 students passed a course that they likely would have failed because they got an incomplete. In 2022, that was 2,200. And in that partial year for 2023, that was 1,200. So what does that kind of mean? I want to show you something else, though. For those of you who doubt whether or not you're making a difference in students' lives, I want to just look at one more number. And that is based on the 2021 rates. How many students, so that's assuming a 0.9% rate of incompletes, of the percentage of incompletes for the total amount of grades that were given, and assuming that about 50% passed, right? So that means in 2022, 1,400 students would have likely failed a course that actually passed because we implemented this new policy.
This is my worst nightmare, that Diana is frozen during the math portion of this presentation. So let's see if she comes back online, or maybe Holly is on and she can finish out the math for us. Oh dear, I hope Diana comes back. Anyway, I think we're getting word to her that she's frozen. So let's give her a moment. But as you can see, this is a significant number of students who would have failed had those incompletes not been granted. So we're going to wait for Diana to come back on, but before we hear from Dr. Stephanie Held-Fisher, I want to take a look at a few of our instructors' teaching philosophies and consider how the teaching philosophy that embraces this flexibility can provide guidance for granting an extension or an incomplete. And
sorry, Amy, I'm back.
How dare you ditch me during math portion?
I was just about to share my screen.
I was just
so mean.
Really cool.
I'm going to get you back for this.
Yeah, I know you will. It's okay. Let me share my slide here. Okay, let's try this one more time. Sorry about that, folks. So I'm not sure where I cut off, but I was just saying that because of all the work that you have done in offering these incompletes, being more flexible, 2,300 students who would have likely failed the course passed. Those are the percentage of based on the number of incompletes that are converted into passing grades, not the ones that fail, because it's about 50%. Those 2,300 students passed because of the work that you did. And why is that important? Other than you are making an impact, those 2,300 students didn't fail, right? They didn't fail that course. Look at our missed retention goals for January, December, and February. We missed by a smidge, 16 students, 13 students, 9 students. So we're on the, I feel like we're on the right track. Look at 2,300 students in a year and a half. So we're seeing that incompletes make a difference. And just moving on really quick, since I dropped out. Just a couple of finishing up our misconceptions. So the misconception number 1, students will take advantage of this new process. That is not supported by the data. While the number of incompletes has risen, the rate of incompletes that convert into passing grades is about the same, 50%. And the average number of incompletes per student, so if they're taking advantage, does that mean that that students are having more than one complete? No, it's still at about 1.21. It went up slightly to 1.38. So students are still only taking about one incomplete. Misconception number 2, students won't persist into their next course. Progression from one course to the next was not significantly impacted. It was slightly higher pre-change, meaning that more students persisted into the next course at slightly higher rate. I'm talking about 88% versus 85%. But this was also earlier in COVID, and the average number of time that they were given between courses was about double. So in 2023, in 2022 was more like 15 to 20 days between courses, and in 2021, when it was a slightly higher rate of persistence, it was more like 35 to 40. So it just means that students who receive incompletes are just as likely to move forward into their next course as a student who completed the course. So again, incompletes, worthwhile. We're in favor. Okay, Amy, back to you.
Thank you so much, Diana. So appreciate you. So as we look at this month's topic of connecting a proactive or radically flexible or equitable teaching philosophy with extensions and incompletes, I thought it'd be valuable to see a few teaching philosophies in action. So if you can go ahead and forward the slide again, Diana. So I believe that education should not merely transmit knowledge, but ignite a passion for lifelong learning. This requires an understanding of the unique challenges students may face outside the classroom and a genuine empathy towards their experiences. I'm happy to provide flexibility in terms of deadlines because I want to provide a path to success and not an obstacle course. So you can see how having a teaching philosophy like this really makes the decision to offer an incomplete or extend coursework deadlines, it makes it quite easy. Takes some of that pressure off you as an instructor. And then there's one more, if you can advance. I recognize that the UAGC student body as additional stressors in the form of family, careers, and military service. I therefore aim to reduce stress in my classroom and provide the much needed flexibility to allow students the time to achieve objectives and succeed. And if you can go ahead, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Stephanie Hild Fisher. She is from the Forbes School of Business, and she's going to share some strategies she uses to encourage student success in her classroom. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie.
Thank you, Amy. It's a pleasure to be here. So one of the things that when I was talking to Amy prior to this, that I mentioned is I see extensions as a tool I can use to help me avoid incompletes with my students. Because sometimes a student, something happens, child gets sick, work suddenly has them doing all kinds of overtime, whatever, and they get behind on an assignment, and then it just snowballs, and at the end of the class, they're desperately asking for an incomplete. Whereas if I had just given them an extension during that one rough week, they would get caught up and they finish the class on time. So I think that's one of the things we want to look at here is the connection between granting extensions and having to go with an incomplete. Just being flexible with the weekly deadlines for certain circumstances can help the students to get caught up before the course ends, and then their grades get posted on time. And you don't really need the incomplete. So that's one of the points that I look at when I see extensions. I see them as a great tool for me to help the students stay on track and not fall so far behind they need the incomplete. Next slide, Diana, thank you. The other thing that I do is if a student, so I'm starting with the extensions, if they come to me and they say this thing has happened, out sick, overtime, whatever, and they need a couple extra days for the assignment. I noticed in the chat somebody had mentioned about accountability. I make the student accountable by having them tell me when they could get it in by. So I ask them, they write to me and they say, my daughter was in the emergency room yesterday and we're just getting her home now. Can I have a couple extra days to get my assignment in? I, of course, say, I'm really sorry to hear about your daughter. I hope she's doing better. So when do you think you could have this paper in by? When do you think you could have the work done by? When the students set that due date, it makes them more accountable to themselves. They're now, the owner of that due date. And I, in turn, use the gradebook tool. I mark an extension and I put a comment in the gradebook saying, as per our email conversation or whatever, if this assignment is submitted by February 9th, 2024, I will revise your grade. Your grade will be updated, something like that. So one of the things, as I said, I do with extensions is I make the student an owner in this process. I insert the accountability by having them set the deadline that puts the responsibility on them to get it done by when they said they could, as opposed to me just setting an arbitrary deadline and them coming back and saying, well, I couldn't make that one. Can I get another one? It's like, nope, you tell me when you can get it in and we'll work from there. Next slide, please, Dana. Okay, so another thing I like to do is I like to be a little proactive when it comes to seeing if students are needing help or needing extensions. And I have a template of weekly emails that I send out to students through Signals, noting that they've missed an assignment. Signals is an excellent time saver. I know some of the comments are about how incompletes and extensions take up our time, but with Signals, if I have 5 students who have missed their week 1 assignment, I can write one email. I go into Signals, I select those 5 students, I use one email and it goes out to each of them individually, and it's taken me all of 2, maybe 3 minutes to reach out to the student. There are templates in Signals that you can use if you're not sure, how you'd want to word it. I personally have my own, keep it in a Word file, copy, paste, and it's quick. And I just select my 5 students, send them an email. Hey, I noticed you didn't submit your week 1 assignment. Is something going on, something I can help with? And the other thing that's important is I click the box to copy their advisor, because then the advisor knows right up front, hey, this person's starting to fall behind, and you have someone else on your side trying to get that student the help they need. So if you haven't tried out Signals, I really suggested it. It's great. It's not hard to access, and it's really easy. I mean, if I'm using the Canvas inbox, I've got to send 5 different emails, and I can't copy their advisor. So that's going to take me like 20 minutes, where I can go to Signals, click 5 students at once, send them a reminder about their missing work, and copy their advisor in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Next slide, please. Okay, the incompletes are an important tool for our students to succeed. So sometimes, even if you grant the person that one extension, they just need the time. That their parent passed away, and now they're trying to help the surviving parent and plan the funeral, and it's something that's going to take them more than a couple of days to recover from. The thing about incompletes is we are not required to give an incomplete to every student who asks. We can apply our own judgment to this. The first thing I ask is, will the incomplete really help this student? Will this really help this student? I had the scenario where a student had a parent who passed away in week 4. They had been on time. They had submitted their work, and then all of a sudden they had a parent, and the other parent was disabled, and they had to do funeral planning. And so we went back and forth, and it was determined that an incomplete was the right thing for him at this time. And he had to submit the week 4 assignment and the week 5 assignment. He said, I can keep up with the discussions, but not the papers. Fine, let's do the incomplete. Let's get you, the care that you need in this difficult time. However, I've also had a student who posted her introduction, and then in week 1 said, after week 1 ended and she didn't submit her work, and I emailed her, her reply was that her child had gotten COVID. Okay, well, when do you think you could have the work in by? And she set the due date, and then she missed that due date, and I reach out to her, and she's like, well, now I have COVID. And it went on like that until we were like in the middle of week 4, and she's like, I'm going to get it all in. And if you get to the end of the class and the student hasn't done like 4 weeks of work, giving them an incomplete is not in their best interest. They're going to lose out on way too much learning, way too much interaction, way too much, collaboration with their peers and stuff. So in that situation, I said, I was like, I'm sorry, but I don't think an incomplete is in your best interest at this time, that you will learn anything. Please reach out to your advisor, and they can talk to you with what their options are, or your options would be at this point in time. So the flip side of that is, for the people who the incomplete really makes sense, I've found that it's a great tool. I noticed in the conversation that some people have mentioned that, well, it's extra work for me because now I have to keep track of this. And it would be good if there was a way we could get the students to also put reminders in their calendars, but I put a reminder in my calendar. And then again, if somebody's on an incomplete, once a week, I just pop into Signals and send them a notice and say, hey, here's a reminder, your incomplete work is due. This is the date. And I copy their advisor. That's, I guess, one of the big things, with Signals, is being able to copy their advisor. So, and that's pretty much how I use extensions and incompletes working together to help the student be successful. So I see there's some questions. I wasn't watching the chat real quick, so.
There is a lot of discussion on giving incompletes, who to give them to, who to not give them to, what kind of impact it has.
Who to give them to? I think that's what, when I was given those two examples, again, it's really, you're the instructor, so it really is your call. I would give it to the people you feel it would really help and they could be successful at it. Have they been successful in the class thus far? The one woman who hadn't submitted anything, it did not show to me that she had been successful in the class thus far. She was dealing with a lot of stuff. It was pretty obvious to me the incomplete wasn't going to help her. So it's kind of like, we're relying on you to be the experts of your classes, I guess is how I would answer it. I don't know, Diana, Amy, you have.
That is a good way to put it. And I'm going to pick on Stephanie Kilby a little bit because I saw her in the chat talking, and she is in student services, and she mentioned that you should not, as an instructor, be afraid to have the student reach out to their advisor to make sure that an incomplete is in their best interest. Student advisors can help facilitate whether or not a student should take an incomplete. They can look at their schedule. They can look at their, lots of different things. So if you have a student who has accommodations, if you're not sure, reach out to those advisors as well, because they can really help you have those conversations with students to make sure that it is feasible. All right, this has been a great conversation. Stephanie, thank you so much for presenting with us. I do want to give us a little bit of time to get into our breakout sessions. Participation in the chat, talking or being on camera is encouraged but never required. We never want you to feel uncomfortable or obligated to participate. We want this to be a safe place for learning. We'll discuss key takeaways from the breakout sessions and additional content when we come back. So please hang out till then if you can. Don't forget, if you aren't comfortable, unable to chat on microphone, you can participate in the chat. And today we will be joined by other members of the Faculty Affairs team, and they will be facilitating the breakout sessions. If your camera is off, facilitators will not call on you for participation unless your hand is raised. And today we do have a handout that Jackie's going to link in the chat so that you have the information you can look at yourself, but your facilitators will take notes for you. Our prompt today is that we are going to co-construct a teaching philosophy statement. So not a whole teaching philosophy, obviously, just 1 to 2 sentences of a statement that relates to equity, flexibility, extensions, incompletes, and how they relate to student success. So you're going to want to think of something that you would put in your teaching philosophy related to these things. All right, and we're putting the link in the chat, and now Jackie's going to send you off to a room, but some of you are going to stay with me and Amy, and we'll chat here. Amy, I paused my screen share. So is it paused for you? Actually, I'm going to stop sharing because it still makes you tiny.
Okay, let's see if that link, if I can.
No, I think it went through fine. I think it's okay. It just also showed a picture. I don't know why, but above it, it has the link.
Okay.
I know it does that to me all the time, Jackie. Okay. Let's see. We are going to,
So we lost. Oh,
it's okay. All right, folks, if you are here with Amy and I, we are going to have our breakout session here. just so that Amy and I can get to participate as well, and answer questions. But so today we are talking about constructing a teaching philosophy statement that relates to equity, flexibility, extensions, and completes, and how they relate to student success. So, Amy, you have that document open.
I do. Do you want to share that, do you think? Or do you want
Can
me to
you
just,
Can you share it?
yeah,
I
you
think
bet.
it's not your favorite thing, but you can have the-
Oh my goodness. Let's see, share screen.
Let me see. I if you can't find it, I can share it.
I got it there, yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
So let's just scroll down to those example statements. Can you make it a little bigger for folks to see?
Sure can. Let's see, can I move this out of the way?
Just at the bottom of the screen, you can up the over to the right, over right there.
There you go.
There you go. That's good.
Okay.
So those are the example statements that Amy chose that relate to flexibility, extensions. For those of you that are here with us, does anybody want to share a statement, maybe something from your own philosophy of teaching statement that relates to flexibility and equity? You don't have to, you could type it in the chat, or feel free to come off microphone.
I would say be there for the students' need according to what you're faced with. So that way they are able to achieve their goals. Not every student have the flexibility to maybe have enough knowledge or resources. Maybe it's technical or any other way. So you have to understand what their needs are and meet them where they are.
I like that.
Yes. That is definitely important, understanding your students' needs and offering to meet them where they're at. Well, that was when we first talked about equity and equality, and we asked folks to share what they thought the difference was. That right there is the difference, is that equity, you're meeting your students where they are.
It's really nice. That's exactly, because every student is going to have a vastly different need. I really like that a lot. And just understanding them. I think that speaks to the relationality specifically mentioned in that article, to forge relationships with these students, because that's going to enable you to get to know them, understand if they are having issues, they'll feel more comfortable coming to you to discuss any problems they're having, or even request things like an incomplete if they're not, if they have what they feel like is some common understanding with you. So thank you so much, Margaret, for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. I learn a lot in these sessions.
Oh, that's so nice
love
to
to hear
hear.
that.
My
go ahead.
teaching philosophy, just to just chime in, is I had a hard time not like putting my own experience in it, like in the sense of like what education meant to me. And I mean, you'd be probably hard pressed to find an instructor here that did not have another instructor in their life at some point in their educational journey that like completely, put them on a different path, or open their minds to the idea of like what could be. And so much of my teaching philosophy was embedded in how school for me had always felt like a safe place, like somewhere where I truly felt seen. Like, there's very few places in life that you're going to get the kind of recognition you'd get on a good paper, or the shout out from an instructor when you really put all you do an all-nighter and you put all that work in. You don't see that kind of recognition through a job, or even like with your day-to-day and your relationships. And it was the one place that you could be as big or small or grand or minuscule as you wanted to be, And I just think that that is something that you don't find every day. And that's what school was always done to me. So it was creating a world where everyone felt seen and understanding that we're all individuals with our own lives, but that education can change your trajectory easily if you really let it, kind of thing. So that was something I focused on in mine.
I love that, Jackie. I'm sure Amy could talk to us for hours about trauma-informed education and how creating a safe place is imperative to support those students.
Right, just for brain function alone, if students are afraid or afraid of you, chances are they're a lot more likely to learn from you if they like you. You know, and not saying it's a popularity contest. It's just I tend to think people who get into teaching like other people, so it's not a big stretch to ask them to, you know, to be kind and to understand. But I love this, Jackie, like creating a safe space. You know, I think you would really like Dr. Mason-Mott and her work in the in her like learning sanctuary, she calls it. You know, she wants students to always feel safe because it just kind of, you know, the neurobiology of learning, that's her expertise. So she wants to calm everything down so students can learn. Because if you're afraid or if you are looking for threats, you shut off the part of your brain that actually helps you to learn. And if Dana Dillard were here, she would tell us much more eloquently how that happens.
Yeah,
But
I mean, we talk about this all the time, like the investment, right? Like, you know, they're not going to like every subject they learn in school. Students don't like every subject that they're required to learn, or even even topics within their chosen major, they're not going to always identify or relate to. The buy-in is us. It's the faculty, it's the instructors. It's like, you know, when I taught middle schoolers, they did well because they liked me, because I remembered things about them. I chatted with them. And so when they were not paying attention or they were not being engaged and I'd look at them, they felt like they were letting me down. Like they wanted to show up. And so much that can be translated into, I know it's hard in our online, you know, environment, but it can be totally translated where like if they buy into you, they buy into the class. Like, and so making them feel safe, acknowledging them as an individual, tying together how this could be a brand new day for them, you know, whatever they want it to be. Like, I feel like it really drives the factor home for our students on wanting to do
I saw you go on camera. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, usually I try to just not be a lurker, but let faculty and staff
Jump right
share, you know, but this is a very to me this idea is really almost foundational for the culture of care and how it launched. And it's this idea that, you know, that if you have a philosophy that every student can learn and you bring that into the classroom, then this idea about accountability or even equality is almost moot. And that you take responsibility as an educator to provide students with every opportunity that they can to be successful. And I know that we have struggled for the last several years about this idea of flexibility, accountability, and rigor. And I don't think they all have to be mutually exclusive. I think you can have rigor and you can be flexible if your goal is for students to achieve the learning outcomes of a course or the program learning outcomes. And so, you know, and I use it's an overused analogy because to me, I share it all the time, and I'm sure, you know, several of you have heard this when I share about like running. I'm a runner, not a very good runner. And so, you know, I run half marathons, 13.1 miles. I start at the same time as everybody else, but I certainly don't finish first, but I finish. And so I still cover the 13.1 miles. I may need more water. I may need to walk. I may need the use of an aid station, but that does not mean that my race is shortened. And I think that's how sometimes we have to view learning, is that we're not shortening or decreasing the rigor. We're just providing supports as needed. And some students may need more support. Some students may not need as many interventions or supports along the way. But, you know, if our goal is to get everybody to the finish line, then I think we can look at flexibility in a different way where it's to support students, not decreasing rigor or accountability. So anyway.
I
You
love
know,
that
Tony, I'm so glad you
comparison.
brought that up.
That was great.
Oops.
I loved that. The running is a great aspect because not everyone
Mhm.
trains for a marathon. They don't have the time to train for it's a great analogy because some students can train their whole life for this marathon, so they're more prepared. Others get a week's notice that they're about to run a 13-mile, but they still can complete it without all that additional training. And I think that is a great analogy.
It's funny
I-
because I was going to use the same analogy. Well, not, I was going to use sport. I used to be a coach. So I was going to say in relation to what you said, Jackie, you don't like every workout. You know what I mean? Like intervals, my VO2 max days are terrible. They're hard. I dread them, but you know what? They make you better. So just like you might love your sport, you don't love every workout, you don't love every single class, you don't love every single topic, but you know, you love the overall thing. You love the benefits it gives you. You love, you know, your zone 2 days. You love, you know, so I love it that you're a runner. Hopefully, Tony, I'll see you running around Surprise, Arizona here soon. You know, I'm way out here in the weeds though, so.
Amy, I actually we have a rental property out there, and
Mhm.
I have run over by Bell Road and Greenway
yeah.
all the time. So
Oh, fun. Got to do the white tank sometime. That's a nice
Yeah.
run.
Okay.
Folks are popping back in about 30 seconds, but I really quick just wanted to say that I was at a conference and someone from another institution, when they were talking about flexibility and rigor, came up and they said that flexibility does not prevent academic rigor. It allows academic rigor to occur when it might not have otherwise. So I think that it's just all about changing the paradigm, changing how you're thinking about it. But we are coming back together. I know that we ran out of time and we were still chatting. I hope everyone else's sessions were yes, Kate, more time, dang it. But you know what? We were talking so much. We have just 3 minutes left. So type your summaries. We can let maybe one person share. Who wants to be the person to share? Whose session was outstanding?
I'll share.
Okay, Benita.
I'll share. I mean, someone else can share if they want to. I'll share 3 minutes. I'm gonna make it one.
Make it one and 2 other people can share.
There you go. So our summary was basically every single person was talking about how they come across from a compassionate viewpoint. They come across being authentic from themselves. So when they write their teaching philosophy, how that student can see who they are as a person. Just a couple little pieces. Avisha, she talked about modeling passion for learning and providing real support. Bill Davis talked about you making sure putting people first and first impressions, authentic and genuine. Again, that was pretty much the common thread. And everybody was basically still trying to make sure that the student at the end of the day understood who they were as an instructor, and they wanted to make sure that they were there for them to support them truly throughout their experience. That's just a super recap. But we had an amazing group of people.
Okay, Teresa, that was great. Benita, you have 1 minute, and I forgot I have 2 slides I got to share with you. So,
okay,
no
I'll try to be
pressure.
really fast. I just realized talking with my breakout group that it's important to remind ourselves that these sessions are not intended to like try to be convincing people that they should be giving extensions and incompletes and this is what you should do. That is not the point. The point is to prompt us to reflect on how what we believe about teaching and learning and what we are inherently dedicated to doing can inform how we work through these situations we encounter in our classrooms that might involve incompletes or extensions, but like one of the best examples of that was Raquel in my group talking about how she employs her own experience as an adult learner conveys that through her teaching philosophy and announcements that she posts in her class. But I just thought that was a perfect example of how we can use our personal philosophies to guide the action we take in our classroom. It's not about, doing what the institution wants us to, or following a specific policy, or, feeling pressured in any certain way. It is about doing what we believe we should be doing based on the philosophy that we have. So I just thought that was a great example and a good reminder for me that I wanted to share with the group. Thanks.
Awesome. So we were just going to end with some questions to consider. And I think that since we are at time, what I would really love for you to do is to join us in Teams, and we can continue that conversation, because we want to know how weaving such a statement that we just were talking about into your teaching philosophy can assist you with granting incompletes, extensions, and supporting students. So think about how this can help you support your students. And in Teams, we're also going to talk about how we can decrease incompletes and increase the use of extensions to avoid those incompletes. So be on the lookout for that. Jackie is going to post the link to the Teams channel in the chat. But if anyone can't find it, you are welcome to email me directly, diana.bogan@uagc.edu, and I will make sure you're in there. We appreciate you all for coming. There's the team page link. Great conversation today, as you can see. And we will be back on Thursday for a repeat of this conversation. So if there's more, if you want to come back and talk again, feel free. If not, we'll see you next time.